Today on Imagine If You Will, we're inside the kitchen of the fifth dimension to talk about Season 2, Episode 25 of the Twilight Zone Original Series, The Silence. If you've seen the episode, you might understand why I decided to cook something that might seem a little disgusting, but it's actually really tasty. Oh, it's tongue! That's creepy. But either way, we're cooking some fucking tongue. Now, don't be intimidated by how gross it sounds and how gross it looks. This is actually going to be a really delicious meal. I've never cooked it before. I've never tried it before, but everything that everyone tells me is that I'm gonna love it, you're gonna love it, and it's fun to cook. If you haven't seen this episode, it is Season 2, Episode 25, The Silence, and it stars Franchot Tone, Liam Sullivan, and Johnathan Harris. We know Johnathan Harris from Lost in Space, Mr. Smith. But we see Johnathan Harris in this episode really playing a different role. He plays the role of a straight man, something you don't normally have him doing. I think he does it really well. He basically plays the conscience of the episode. In this episode, I'll break it down really quick for you. Essentially what happens is these guys are in a gentleman's club. It opens up. Liam Sullivan, a young man, is holding court amongst the club members, talking to everyone, having a great time. And you see Franchot Tone. Now, Franchot Tone, just to give you a little backstory of who he is, where he comes from, was a huge Hollywood actor in the, I want to say mid-50s, late 40s. Really great actor. Boy, I'm lost at the top of my head right now, but it's basically a 3-character story, and it's all shot within the gentleman's club and this one little room that contains a man-sized cage or terrarium or whatever you want to call it. So Liam Sullivan, the young man who's holding court, has everyone's attention, and you can see Franchot Tone getting annoyed. And it's set up that Liam is this boorish, obnoxious, never shuts up character. Franchot Tone decides to put him into his place, offers him a bet. First discusses the bet with Johnathan Harris. Johnathan Harris says, this is a horrible idea. I don't think you should do it. Passes the bet along to Liam. I'm going to look up that name because I can't seem to think of who it is. Jamie Tennyson. How did I forget Jamie Tennyson? In fact, I want to grab my notes. One of the first things that we want to do is take our tongue out of the vacuum pack, get it out of the fridge. If you bought it frozen, if you ordered it online frozen, take it out, de-thaw it. If you can, I like to de-thaw outside of the vacuum pack. It's not really necessary with the tongue, but I do feel as though the more oxygen you get to it, it works better with the meat. I am not a chef, and I am not trained, but I've learned a few tips and tricks along the way. I've worked in many restaurants before becoming what I am today. Now, I know it seems like this is going to be a little gross. I have never cooked tongue before, nor have I ever ate tongue before. I am not a chef, but I have been cooking almost my entire adult life. I got a job in a restaurant when I was 16 years old as a line cook, flipping burgers, and then it progressed from there. I've worked in all kinds of restaurants, from Applebee's to Red Lobster, Cheesecake Factory, and even local places here in Buffalo like Costa's, Alton's, things like that. Nothing crazy, nothing super fancy, but I know my way around a kitchen. I know what tastes well together, and I like cooking. So this is just another creative outlet. The point is, I thought it would be cool to have a cooking show based around specific episodes of the Twilight Zone. So let's get started. First thing you want to do is, if you have ordered your tongue off of the internet, you can do that. You can also get it at your local butcher. You can get it at Walmart. It is everywhere. Tongue is not difficult to find. I thought it was going to be hard, super easy. The other thing is, I'm told that this is just like eating the most tender steak you've ever had in your life. I don't know if that's true. We're going to find that out. It also seems very simple to prepare. Now, there's different ways that you could prepare it. There's definitely all types of different style, from Japanese to other countries. There's all these different ways to cook it. We're going to do it a pretty simple way. I mean, you can make tacos out of it. Essentially, you just have a meat product that you can do whatever you want with, right? We are just going to cook it in a very simple way, and hopefully it's going to turn out perfect. I'm also told that there's a way, it's very difficult to overcook tongue. Most people wouldn't know the difference, is what I'm trying to say, between cooked tongue or overcooked tongue and perfectly cooked tongue. I definitely wouldn't know the difference because I've never had it. But I'm told there is a difference, and it's not that difficult to make sure that it's prepared properly, and that's what we're going to try to do today. So in a basic kitchen, what I'm using, you can get, I bought everything actually today from the local grocery store, but you can get it at your local grocery store, and everything I'm using in my kitchen is simple. I don't have anything special, no special tools. I'm actually not even going to be using the pot that they recommended. So let's get it started. The first thing you're going to want to do, like I said, if you bought it vacuum packed, it mostly comes not from a butcher, you're going to want to make sure that you thaw it out completely under refrigeration. And I would recommend that you thaw it out outside of the vacuum pack if you can. I was not able to do that. I received mine already thawed, but it is still in the vacuum pack. Oh, now this is an actually much larger piece of tongue than you can buy out there. I bought a larger one. I wasn't sure if I should get small, big, didn't know if anyone was going to show up and have some of this, but I think I'm going to have plenty to share right here for us. So I'm going to get a little tray so that I don't get blood all over my counter here, my cutting board. Can you see my booty? Booty, booty, booty. Butt. Charlie Butt Dance. We got any Always Sunny fans out there? I'm an Always Sunny fan. I like to use glass. It just seems like there's less impurities in it. You can see what's going on. So it's real simple. We're just going to cut it open. Just going to pop that bad boy open. As I said, normally I think it's best to... Oh, it's so gross. Oh, it's so fucking gross. It's grossing me out. Smells okay. Oh, this is going to be really difficult for me to eat. It's going to be really tough. Because it's disgusting to me. Like, this is a fucking tongue. Look at that. It's a fucking cow tongue. It's so gross. Okay. All right. Now, crucial step. Wash your hands, people. Wash your hands. I did wash my hands already. I just want to wash them again to show that you should be washing your hands before you handle any type of food, and also in between handling different types of food and things like that. Can you see me over here? I'm all the way over here washing my hands. Good hand washing techniques are important. You want that water to be hot, over 100 degrees. Otherwise, you're not going to kill the germs, right? And it's also a good idea to have something to wipe your hands off with, which I don't have. I don't have anything to wipe my hands off with. I think we're going to be okay, though. We're going to make it happen. I'm having a hard time just touching this thing, okay? So we're going to let this kind of... Oh, God, it's so gross. It feels like a fucking tongue. It feels like a tongue. Oh, God, it's so gross. It's so weird. Now, you're probably like, oh, what a pussy. Why is he so afraid of the tongue? Because it's fucking disgusting. It's so weird. But apparently it's not. So we're just going to beat it up a little bit. Let it get up to kind of room temperature a little there. And we'll set it right there so you guys can see it. Oh, so gross. And I will tell you a little bit about this episode so you know what's going on. Why did we cook tongue? What was the reason that I chose tongue? Well, in this episode, as I began to talk about earlier, I'm actually going to grab my notes because I got a little lost and got to be careful because we don't want to get food crossed with, I don't want blood and all kinds of nastiness in there. That'd be really gross. We don't want that. Really, really, really gross. If I can borrow a line from and manipulate a little bit. This is a very well-remembered episode, and it's interesting that it's so well-remembered because it doesn't have any elements of the Twilight Zone that we're used to, like a science fiction element or a fantasy element or a magical element. This story could very much be rooted in the real world. It could happen to anyone. And it's definitely not something that requires it to be in the fifth dimension. So I think it's interesting. And a little side note on that, something that I kind of took away from the commentary on the Blu-ray, which I encourage you to check out. There's a commentary on this episode with Marv Wolfman, the great comics writer, creator of Blade, amongst many others. He does a commentary on this episode with Mark Scott Zicree, who is the author of the Twilight Zone Companion. And he made a really good point that if you were a staff writer on a show like this, it would be very difficult to try to pitch it because the Twilight Zone is so known for its fantasy and science fiction elements. And this is completely devoid of it. So let's get into the story a little bit. Again, I did research and I was going to try to break down the episode as much as possible while doing the cooking show, because I'm probably going to put up the audio version still. It's not just going to be this video version of the YouTube show. But in this episode, as I said, it starts out in a gentleman's club, and you have a young man played by Liam Sullivan, and he plays Jamie Tennyson. He's holding court, talking to all the gentlemen around him, and you see in the corner older man played by Franchot Tone. He's sick and tired of listening to Jamie Tennyson go on and on and on and on, and you can see that the spite is building within him. And it definitely, in my opinion, and once we find out more where the story's going, spite isn't the right word, but envious and jealousy, perhaps of his youth and perhaps of his ability, not just his youth, but Jamie Tennyson is very much a legitimate and authentic character. And we find out that Franchot Tone's character is very illegitimate and not authentic. So this story is a very heavily rooted in, it's a character study story, essentially, between these two men. So after we're introduced to these two characters, and it's very stylistically done. It's done really, really well. But we're getting all over the place here. We're trying to focus on cooking, trying to give you the breakdown of it. This thing is gross. Like, can you see that? You can see where they slice. I mean, it's kind of sad. Like, they sliced it off the back of the cow. Makes you want to be a vegetarian. Anyway, we'll see how it goes. As Tennyson drones on, Franchot Tone's character gets this idea that he'll send a wager, a bet, over to Jamie Tennyson. Tennyson looks at the bet, and it's a bet to stay silent for a year inside this cage, and if you do it, I'll give you $500,000, which is a tremendous amount of money. Johnathan Harris, the voice of reason in this, and as I stated before, Johnathan Harris is a character actor that always played his characters very big. He's known for going above and beyond. He's known for specifically Mr. Smith on Lost in Space. And in this, he's reserved. As I said, he's the voice of reason. He's the conscience of the episode, constantly trying to convince Franchot Tone that this is not the way to go. And we have to remember, too, that Johnathan Harris is Franchot Tone's lawyer, his friend. He's probably well aware of whether or not Franchot Tone is able to make good on this bet. Anyway, Tennyson takes the deal. He's in this cage for a year. It plays out. And all along, we see Tone's character, Franchot Tone, try to erode away at Tennyson. Now, during the bet, Tennyson can't speak, obviously. Oh, shit. All the lights are off. God damn it. Sorry about that, people. We had a little lighting issue. Don't know if you'll even notice it, but let's get back on track. So, Colonel Archie Taylor, that's the character that Franchot Tone plays, trying to make him think that his wife might be looking for other men, and that there's the money he's losing while he's in there, and really playing away at him, just kind of slowly scratching away the surface, trying to erode his confidence in the wager. And we'll come to find out there's a reason for that. I'll tell you now, spoilers. Franchot Tone just doesn't have the money to pay the bet. If you've seen it, if you haven't, Colonel Archie Taylor can't make good on the bet. Now, one of the things I wanted to mention during this episode and during the filming of this episode, there's kind of a cool little behind the scenes story that happened. If you notice while watching this episode, throughout the middle of it, while Tennyson is in the cage and playing out the year of silence, we only see half of Colonel Archie Taylor's face. You can tell that he has a two-faced nature. There's a lot going on stylistically just by choosing to only show 3/4 or show him in profile or sometimes mask it with scenery and things like that. It really adds a tremendous amount of dramatic value visually to the story. Well, come to find out, it was all based on practicality that they did that. In the beginning of the episode and the end of the episode, you see the front of Franchot Tone's face, Colonel Archie Taylor. After the first day of shooting, something happened. Now, there's two accounts as to what happened, but the first account is that Franchot Tone was at a party. He was with his girlfriend. He saw some flowers on an embankment, decided to pick one, slipped, fell, and scraped up the entire side, or it would be this side, the entire side of his face, right? So they couldn't shoot him from that side. Serling tells the story that Franchot Tone was out in a parking lot somewhere or somewhere and hit on some woman that was obviously with another man, and that guy beat the piss out of him, smashing his face, half his face, into the gravel. So his whole face was completely raw, and they couldn't, continuity-wise, use it from what they had shot in the first day. So completely, as I said, out of practicality and necessity, they decided to shoot him through the profile, three-quarters view, these kind of up angles, and it really gives him, as I said, a more of a malevolent kind of look. And a lot of critics at the time even gave the director, Sagal, what was his first name? Boris Sagal, all kinds of credit for choosing to shoot it that way, when in actuality, it really was because they had to do it. Now, the other point to that, or at least the other side of the coin, is that's what a good director does. The good director takes what's in front of him, the tools at his disposal, and makes something good out of it. So credit to Boris Sagal for that, the director of this episode. Another little side note about Boris Sagal, he is Katie Sagal's father. We know Katie Sagal from Married with Children, Sons of Anarchy, great actress. Futurama, one of my favorites. I love Futurama. And another thing too is Boris Sagal actually worked with Serling previously. I want to say it was in 49 or 53. I have to look it up here. Basically, Boris Sagal was the story editor of an anthology series, and Serling had submitted a story to him through Blanche Gaines. Blanche Gaines was Serling's agent at the time. It was in 1952. So Serling submits this story, and it was rejected by Studio One. And Sagal stated that he decidedly feels that you, Serling, are the kind of writer they could use if your scripts had a little more scope and range for motion pictures. It was the only script penned for Serling for the television anthology broadcast on September 3rd, 1955, with Jack Carson, James Barton, and Nancy Gates in the leads. So just a little bit of information. Let's get into cooking this tongue. I gotta tell you the story though. Okay, that's what ends up, I didn't finish the story of the Twilight Zone episode, why we're cooking tongue. So he has to be silent. You might see where I'm going with this. He has to be silent throughout the whole thing. Come to find out at the end that he stays out through the whole year. Tennyson stays through the whole year. He's quiet through the whole year. He walks into the club. Colonel Archie Taylor cannot make good on the bet. And we think that's the twist. And that's really where the director, and I want to say Serling, the writer, was leading us. They were trying, this is season 2 of the Twilight Zone, so we're expecting a twist. We're expecting a reversal. We're waiting for something to be out of the norm. And especially in a situation like this, where it's very much rooted in reality, what's going to happen? Well, they play to the fact many times throughout the episode that the guy just can't make with the bet. And at the end, he can't make with the bet. Well, that's not the twist. What happens is Tennyson then reveals on a piece of paper, he's like, why are you writing? Say whatever you want. He can't say what he wants. Pulls off his ascot, and we see a slice here. Tennyson had his vocal cords severed in order to win the bet. And we have this very dark, kind of macabre ending that I think, and many others have made this observation, it could very easily be a Hitchcock story. As I said, there's no fantasy elements, science fiction elements, none of that. It is a horror story in my mind. I guess you could lean it towards more suspense, but the ending kind of puts it into this horrific happening. And I really enjoyed it. I think it's a great episode, and I think because of the ending, it may seem to have a slow burn and drag on a little bit, but because that ending is so strong and so poignant that it really is lasting and worth it. So that's how I came to Tongue. I thought we would cook tongue because Tennyson cut out his vocal cords. He severed his vocal cords, cut his tongue out. I took a little creative license. So I have more to talk about with this episode, and maybe I'll do a separate additional podcast about it, but I think we should get into cooking this wonderful tongue. Oh, so gross. So gross. Okay, so the first thing that I want to do is I'm going to make sure that I have the pot filled with water. So we're going to take our pot and we are just going to fill this up with water. Now, I would recommend, you can use a slow cooker. I would not necessarily recommend that. You can also use a lined pot, a cast iron pot. That's a much better way to go. Because this is a stainless steel pot, I am actually going to cook this at a much kind of lower temperature than I would have been able to cook it in an insulated cast iron pot. I don't want anything to sear or burn or anything. So we'll fill this up. You don't need much for this recipe. It's a really simple recipe. You need some bouillon cubes, or you can use beef broth, or you can make your own broth if you have some made somewhere. But you need a nice amount of bouillon for the broth. I like to have some garlic. We're gonna have some garlic in there. Some tongue. We're gonna use a little onion, a few carrots. I got some bay leaf, peppercorns, and some kosher salt. Now, the other thing to mention, that's plenty, a little bit more. You really don't need all the vegetables. By all accounts, everything I've read and found online about cooking tongue is that the veggies really don't affect the flavor of the tongue so much. The tongue is like 75% fat, and that's where it gets its real tenderness and its juiciness. So the very first thing I'll do, we want to get that started. My stove is broke. My stove is broke. So we're going to get that up to high heat to start. Cover it up. We'll throw some salt in there first. Now, we all know that salt does not make the water boil faster, but it does flavor it. And if you didn't know that, if you think it does, you're wrong. So we'll put some salt in there, but not too much, because this, as I said, this is going to be very tender and juicy and salty already because it's 75% fat, and it's grossing me the fuck out. I'm going to be honest. It's really gross just sitting here, grossing me the fuck out. Really gross. But we're going to get through it. All right. First things first, we want to get this bouillon taken care of. Now, I don't have the mortar pestle, whatever the heck thing it's called. You're supposed to use those things where you grind it up. I do not have that. So I'm going to open all these up. Okay, so my bouillon was a little old and gross. And then I looked at it's been a while since I used it. Best before August 29th, 2016. Yeah, kind of old. So I ran out real quick and I just got some instant bouillon. Again, this isn't a critical broth. It's not like it needs to be really special or anything like that, but this is all junk, unfortunately. It's weird. It's all molasses. Maybe it'll be good. I don't know. So we're going to put this in there. You can measure it out for how much water you put in there, but this is 28 cups. You figure 32 cups and 2 gallons, 16 cups a gallon. So there's about 2 gallons of water in here. Pour out a little bit. That's what's great about having worked in the kitchens and the restaurants is you really start to get a feel for and what works with what and how much of certain things you use. So when I do recipes, I really do a lot of stuff by eye and by taste and trial and error and what's worked before, that kind of thing. So almost feel like we could use it all. We're just gonna use it all for the heck of it. I'm gonna toss all this in the garbage. Actually, you know what? I'll put one of them in there. See what happens. Ooh, it smells delish. Smells delish and nutrish. I did shut off my oven, so I have to start my oven again. My stove. I like to start it on a high heat, get the water going up in temperature a little bit, and then add the tongue, drop the heat down a little bit. That's kind of how I like to do it. Unfortunately, as I said, my stove has been acting very strangely lately, so I need to light it. Be very careful doing that. It doesn't like that. Put it on high heat. We want to get a wire whisk. Kind of whisk this up. Real good. Okay, now I'm actually going to move the pot over to this closer burner here just so that we can get a better view of it on the camera. So we'll start that up. Here like that. Put that on low. We'll shut that one off. Now I like to add a bay leaf. You can get bay leaf from your grocery store. All this stuff, as I said, any grocery store. Just a single. These are pretty powerful, pretty strong. I'll do 2 of them. What the hell? It's a big piece of tongue. Big piece of tongue. And we'll do a couple cloves of garlic. And again, we're not going to be eating these, so I don't have to get too crazy with peeling them, that kind of thing. Just do a couple cloves of garlic, cut in quarters. Cutting up these. Cut this one in half. That's good. A little garlic. A little garlic in there. And just a couple carrots for the heck of it. A couple baby carrots. Now, again, I've been told these vegetables really don't affect the flavor that much. I definitely won't be eating them, but I think they'll add a little something. We're going to try it out. So, we'll try that out. Try it out. Try it out. Shout out to the mommies. So we'll cut this up nice and... This actually doesn't even need to be that cut up too much. We'll just kind of throw some onion in there. I'm not a huge onion fan. I'm using this nice sweet onion. So you get the onion flavor, but it's not too oniony. Just the right amount of oniony. Just the right amount of oniony. Good stuff. Good stuff. And I'm actually going to use my grater. I got a grater here. I'm going to shave some of this onion on there. In there. Just to make things easier. As I said, you don't need a lot. It's not going to do much. But it'll add a little flavor. Be good. Chop those nice and shaved onions up in there. And then I'll actually do a couple more. All right. And we'll take a couple slices of whole onion. Maybe we'll use for garnish later or something of that nature. Old Alfred Tennyson. That's not his name. Jamie Tennyson. Got Jamie Tennyson and Colonel Archie Taylor, something like that. Crazy. So we'll throw some of these onions in there. Oh yeah. And then we need some peppercorns too. I like to have some peppercorns in there. Now, it said you're able to adjust this. What I'd like to do is pop the whole thing off and just get the peppercorns in there. You know? Don't try this at home, people. You can buy these already done. I just didn't already able to get to. That's not gonna work. I want these whole peppercorns in there though. To adjust, grind, remove cap, pinch red tabs, turn down. How do you get the fucker off of there? I know how. This is the tool you need right here. Pop that baby off of there. Let's see if I break my hand. I'm sure there's an easier way to do this, folks. But don't force it unless you want to break it. That works. Now I can get out. Inside there. Can you see that? Peppercorns. Peppercorns in there. Oh yeah. All right. Now, bump bada bump bada bump bada bada. I'm gonna throw up. You know what? The other thing I want to do. They said it's not a bad idea to cut off. Oh, it's so gross when you touch it. It feels like a giant cat's tongue. It's so fucking gross. They said to cut off little pieces of extra fat that you don't really need, like this. Pieces of excess fat that you just... As I said, this is 75% fat, the meat itself, so you really don't need the extra gristle while cooking it. So we'll get that off of there. Make sure you got a nice sharp knife. It'll make a big difference. And you're always careful when you're cutting. Not cut yourself, right? Okay, I'm getting into the meat here. Don't want to do that. Here we go. A bit of this here. You know what? I think I'm just going to put it in there. Just as it is. It's trimmed enough. Oh, it's so gross. How'd you like that going down on you, huh, baby girl? It's so gross. All right. All right. Or guy, if that's your thing. Not mine. I don't want no tongues in my butt. I'm just going to put this in here. All right. It's in there. Oh. And we're going to turn it up to high heat. About 5, 4, right in there. All right, we'll let that cook. It takes about 3 to 4 hours. This will most likely be more towards the 4-hour mark because it's such a big cut of meat. And we'll go from there. At the end of the video, I'll put up some cook times as far as approximately how long you should let it simmer for before, based on the weight and things like that. As I said, it is possible to overcook this. However, most people would not know the difference. I definitely wouldn't because I've never had it before. So should be good. I'll get cleaned up here and hopefully in a few hours, we're gonna have a delicious tongue. All right, the tongue is just about done. It's been cooking for about 3 hours. I want to get an internal temperature of about 150 degrees. I'll pull it out, we'll let it cool down a little bit, and then we're gonna pull the skin off and we're gonna try that bad boy. Hopefully it turned out great. Before we get into that, there's just a few quotes from the actors in this episode that I wanted to mention. And now I found these quotes in Martin Graham Jr.'s book. I think it's called Unlocking the Twilight Zone. Unlocking the Door to a Television Series. The Twilight Zone Unlocking the Door to a Television Series by Martin Graham Jr. The first quote is from Academy Award winner Franchot Tone. He says, "This town, the movie producers, seem to be about 20 years behind television." Now this came from TV Guide. "Every film script I'm sent to read has me in the same kind of part I was playing 20 years ago. Sure, the character's a little older, but they still want me in white tie and tails as a slick, well-groomed, well-educated, well-heeled stuffed shirt. I have to laugh and I tell them, no thanks. Tone was selective in the offers to appear on television anthologies. I've turned down a bunch of other half-hour film series, he continued. None of them had any distinction. I don't want to play a cowboy or a private detective. Oh, I knew Rod Serling for years. I did 2 of those Twilight Zones. Now, John Harris, Dr. Smith, he goes on to say about Rod Serling, oh, I knew Rod Serling for years. I did 2 of those Twilight Zones. One of them was filmed and one of them was taped. They were not very large roles, though. I wish I had the opportunity to play a lead. Rod was on set when I worked with Franchot Tone. We chatted a little here and there. He was a very imaginative man and very gentle. Many years after, I went to work on The Liars Club, and Rod was the host. I'd make these funny faces, cross my eyes, and he would laugh and laugh. He would beg me repeatedly not to do it on camera, and every time I was evil, and he would just laugh. Now, you could definitely see Johnathan Harris doing that. And again, we see Johnathan Harris's range in this episode because he's playing the straight man. It's something that we're not really, and when I say we, the audience of the time is not really familiar with John Harris in that sense. I mean, this comes before Lost in Space, so we don't have that typecast idea of him, but he's definitely, every single other role he's played has been a larger-than-life role. Even in 22, the videotaped episode he did with the stripper. Ooh. If you haven't seen that episode, I encourage you to go back and check it out. We did do a podcast about it. Yeah, check it out. One more quote. Rod was a very quiet fellow on the set, actor Liam Sullivan recalled for author Mark Phillips. He let the director take over in most things. He was a terrific writer, and after that experience, I was a Twilight Zone fan. The long speech I had in the opening sequence, that was 3 pages. The day of shooting, Rod came up to me and asked if I could memorize an additional page. On the spot. I was doing so well, he wanted to lengthen the scene. I said if he could write that fast, I could memorize it. He went off into a corner and started scribbling. He handed me the sheets off his notepad. I picked a corner, started memorizing. He was very pleased with the results. The Short Run magazine show premiered shortly before The Twilight Zone was on the air and expired shortly after the series was canceled after the 5th season. The magazine, notable for presenting reviews and previews of top-class television, film, and stage performances, rarely discussed The Twilight Zone. This marked the first of 4 episodes to be mentioned in the publication. The August 1962 issue recommended that its readers catch the rerun on August 10th, remarking that it's an atypical trip through the Twilight Zone. The denouement may leave the viewer, if not Mr. Tennyson, speechless. That comes from Martin Graham Jr.'s book. Let's get into the tongue and see how speechless we actually are. All right, here we go. The moment of truth is upon us. Here we go. Bum ba da bum ba da bum ba da na na bum ba da bum ba da bum ba da na na da da da. It is done. All right. Let's do this. Let's do this. Whew. Oh, it's so gross looking. Look at that. Oh, so nasty. But it looks pretty good though. I mean, really, other than the tongue part. He's got a bigger tongue than me. You know what they say, big tongue. I don't know what they say. You're good at cunnilingus if you've got a big tongue? Probably. Cunnilingus. Oh, all right. All right. We want to let that bad boy, oh yeah, cool down a little bit. And then we'll start slicing it up. All right, we're shooting for an internal temperature of 150. Let's see where we're at. All right. It's so gross. It's disgusting. Ugh. All right, so now we take the skin off. And apparently you just slice. No. This knife is not very sharp. Oh my God. We need a sharper knife. This is so gross. I have a knife sharpener. That's what I'm looking for. It's not the greatest, but it'll help. It'll help. It'll be better than what we got going on now. Alright, and apparently you just peel it off. It feels like my cock. Like, it just feels weird. Doesn't feel right. Does not feel like a normal piece of meat that you would normally be eating. I mean, I cook steak a lot. I cook ribeye a lot. I like ribeye. But this, I don't know what is going on here with this. But it does not want to come off, my friends. Imagine, if you will, the tongue that wouldn't get skinned. Oh, it's grossing me out. It really is. Like, I know it's gonna be good. It's gonna taste delicious, I'm sure, but it's grossing me out. The shape, the feel, the look of it, knowing that it's a tongue is really fucking gross. All right, we almost got all the skin off. I can't get the bottom stuff off for some reason. So I'm sure the chef could, this is, it's like, I don't think it's supposed to just peel right off. I think I let it cool off too long. I really do. I think I let it cool off too long. I may have cooked it a little bit at too high of a heat, too fast. It cooked about 3 hours. Maybe a little bit more. And then I let it cool for quite a while. Because I had to go to work. That's the secret, people. I had to kind of do this in shifts because I had to go to work. Because nobody pays me to cook tongue. Why would they? I don't even know what I'm doing. Okay, I'm about done. Now the plan was, I was just going to bite into this thing. I'm just going to keep this. I can't get the bottom of the fucking skin off. It does not want to come off. You can't get it off. I have to fillet it. Alright, here we go. You got out somehow? How the fuck did you get out? How'd you do that? Okay, here we go. Moment of truth. Now, I was going to show you folks how to do a couple different... Now, I was going to show you guys how to prepare this and use it for different things, but it's basically just it's a beef product, and you can eat it however you want, right? So what I am going to do is I'm going to bite right into it and see what happens. I'm going to bite right into the end of this little guy right here. All right, here we go. I'm actually fucking nervous. This is so gross. I might have to close my eyes because it really feels like I'm about to put a giant penis in my mouth. And if that's very strange, I've never done that and I have no interest in doing that. So here we go. Oh, I can't do it. All right. Oh. Here we go. Be a man. It's a fucking beef tongue. the shit I've seen in my life, I can't eat a beef tongue. Come on. It's pretty good. Very beefy. I didn't throw up. It's chewier than I expected. I think I made a mistake cooking it. So we may have to return to this meal item. It's definitely chewier than I expected. But it's pretty good. Pretty good. Now let's try cutting off a piece of the back here. They say you can slice it into little pieces. What I'm planning on doing is I'm gonna slice it into probably 1/8 inch or 1/4 inch thick slices and use it for sandwiches, for work. It's gonna be great. I'm gonna make little subs and sandwiches, things like that. Or wraps, most likely. When I say sandwiches, I usually mean wraps. By the way, I still feel extremely awkward holding on to this fucking thing. And I've lost all conversation about, I almost feel like it's not cooked enough. You know what's funny about this though is because it's a little undercooked, I think I could sear it, pan fry it, cut it up, cube it, make some tacos out of it. That could be really good. I'm not sure it's done though, people. I am not sure it's done. I feel like it's not. I feel like it's got to cook a little longer. It looks done. Feels done. This part feels done. It's weird. It's pretty good. A lot better than I thought. Really pretty tasty. Well, that was kind of anticlimactic, but that's it. This is the Imagine If You Will podcast. I am Dan Gans. Dan Gans. Thank you for stopping in. And I'll see you next week when we cook something else that I deem worthy. Either way. Thanks, guys. Miss you 2-5. Love you, Chris. The video cut out in the middle of recording, and I had this really awesome outro that was funny and all this awesome stuff, where I actually bit into the tongue. You can see where I bit right into it. But either way, you missed it because Dan's a moron. But I'm gonna bite right into it again. Turns out it's really good. I even fed some to the dog on camera, but we didn't get to see that either. It's excellent stuff. It's very tender, flavorful. It's good. I don't think I cooked it properly. I think I need to try again and see how it turns out. But thanks for hanging out inside the Fifth Dimension Kitchen. I am Dan Gens. This is the Imagine If You Will podcast, and I'll see you next week when we cook something even more strange. Or not. I'm not sure yet. Either way. See you next week. Too chewy. This part's good though.